Even though I distrusted my daughter's boyfriend, I allowed them to live in my house for a while. I decided to test him and placed hidden cameras around the house. I was in shock when I saw what he did to my wife. The next day, his bags were on the street. He couldn't believe what came next. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. I never thought at 62 years old I'd be sharing my home with a man I couldn't stand. But there I was, watching Raymond carry his third suitcase through my front door like he owned the place. My daughter Leah followed behind him, her face glowing with that blind happiness that comes with young love. She was 28, old enough to make her own decisions, but young enough to make terrible ones. "Dad, isn't this great?" Leah beamed as she set down a box marked kitchen stuff in my living room. "Ray and I can finally save up for our own place while staying here." I forced a smile and nodded, but something in my gut twisted. Raymond was 26, charming in that practiced way that made my skin crawl. He had perfectly styled brown hair, always wore expensive cologne, and spoke with a kind of smooth confidence that reminded me of used car salesmen I'd encountered over the years. "Mr. Bryan," Raymond said, extending his hand with that million-dollar smile, "I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. I promise we won't be a burden." I shook his hand, noting how he held it just a beat too long, his grip just a little too firm. Everything about him felt calculated, rehearsed. "Just remember, this is temporary," I said, my voice steady but cool. Connie, my wife of 35 years, emerged from the kitchen wearing her favorite yellow apron. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she had that warm smile that had captured my heart decades ago. "I made your favorite pasta salad, Leah," she announced, then turned to Raymond. "And I wasn't sure what you liked, so I made a little bit of everything." "Mrs. Connie, you're an angel," Raymond said, and I watched as he placed his hand gently on her shoulder. The gesture lasted just a moment, but something about it made my jaw clench. "I can already tell where Leah gets her kindness from." Connie blushed slightly, the way she did when someone complimented her cooking. "Oh, you're too sweet." That night, after Leah and Raymond had settled into the guest room down the hall, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Connie was already asleep beside me, her breathing soft and even. But my mind was racing. There was something about Raymond that didn't sit right with me. The way he looked at our house during the tour like he was appraising it, the way he asked casual questions about my work, my retirement plans, our finances. "You're being paranoid," I whispered to myself. But 38 years of working in insurance had taught me to trust my instincts when something felt off. The next morning, I woke to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. I threw on my robe and walked downstairs to find Raymond and Connie at the breakfast table, sharing coffee and what looked like an intimate conversation. Leah was nowhere to be seen. "Morning," I said, my voice gruffer than intended. "Oh, Bryan." Connie looked up with bright eyes. "Raymond was just telling me about his plans to start his own business. Isn't that exciting?" "What kind of business?" I asked, pouring myself coffee. Raymond leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. "Import and export. There's a lot of money to be made if you know the right people." He paused, studying my face. "Of course, it requires some initial investment, but with the right backing, the returns can be substantial." There it was, the real reason he was here. "Sounds risky," I said flatly. "All the best opportunities are," Raymond replied, with that practiced smile. "But I understand not everyone has the vision for that kind of venture." The condescension in his tone was subtle but unmistakable. I felt my blood pressure rising, but before I could respond, Leah bounded down the stairs in her scrubs. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital, 12-hour shifts that left her exhausted but fulfilled. "Morning, everyone," she called out, kissing Raymond on the cheek before grabbing a piece of toast. "I'm running late, but I'll see you all tonight." After she left, the house felt different. Raymond and Connie continued their conversation while I retreated to my home office, supposedly to check emails, but really to collect my thoughts. Through the thin walls, I could hear Raymond's voice, smooth and persuasive, mixed with Connie's delighted laughter. By the third day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing control of my own home. Raymond had a way of inserting himself into every conversation, every decision. When Connie mentioned wanting to redecorate the living room, Raymond immediately offered suggestions. When she complained about her aching back from gardening, he offered to give her a massage. When she worried about me working too hard, Raymond was right there to agree, suggesting I needed to slow down and enjoy life more. Each interaction was innocent enough on its surface, but together they formed a pattern that made my stomach churn. Raymond was positioning himself as the caring, attentive man in Connie's life, while subtly undermining me at every turn. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, Raymond raised his wine glass. "I'd like to propose a toast," he said, his eyes meeting each of ours, "to family, to new beginnings, and to the people who open their hearts and homes to others." We all raised our glasses, but as I sipped my wine, I caught Raymond watching me over the rim of his glass. There was something calculating in his expression, like a chess player who had just made a winning move. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I made a decision that would change everything. I couldn't keep living with this gnawing suspicion, this feeling that something terrible was happening right under my nose. I needed to know what Raymond was really up to when I wasn't around. The next morning, I drove to Electronics Plus downtown and bought 4 small security cameras. The salesman, a kid barely older than Leah, assured me they were virtually invisible and could record for hours. I told him I was worried about break-ins in the neighborhood, which wasn't entirely a lie. Installing them took most of the afternoon while everyone was out. I placed one in the living room hidden behind a picture frame, another in the kitchen tucked behind the coffee maker, one in the hallway near the guest room, and the last one in my home office. Each camera connected to an app on my phone, allowing me to monitor everything remotely. As I finished setting up the last camera, I heard Connie's car in the driveway. My hands were shaking slightly as I quickly hid the packaging and sat down at my desk, pretending to work on bills. Was I being paranoid? Was I violating my family's privacy based on nothing more than a gut feeling? But as I heard Raymond's voice welcoming Connie home, that same smooth, calculated tone that had been setting my teeth on edge for days, I knew I had to find out the truth. Whatever was happening in my house, whatever game Raymond was playing, I was going to catch him at it. I just had no idea how devastating that truth would be. The first day of surveillance revealed nothing unusual. Raymond and Leah went about their morning routine, sharing coffee and quiet conversation before she left for her shift. I watched from my office, feeling slightly foolish as I monitored my own family like some kind of private investigator. Maybe I really was just a paranoid old man, threatened by a younger guy who was dating my daughter. But then Tuesday happened. I had gone to my weekly poker game with the guys from my old insurance office, something I'd been doing for 15 years. Connie was home alone, cleaning the house and preparing dinner. Raymond had told Leah he was going to spend the day job hunting, but when I checked the cameras from Charlie's living room, I saw he never left the house. What I witnessed made my blood run cold. Raymond emerged from the guest room around 10 in the morning, long after Leah had left for work. Instead of heading out to look for employment as he'd claimed, he walked straight to the kitchen where Connie was washing dishes. I watched through the hidden camera as he approached her from behind, close enough that she startled when she noticed him. "Oh, Raymond, you scared me," she laughed, her hand flying to her chest. "Sorry, Mrs. Connie," he said, but his smile looked predatory through the lens. "I was just thinking about our conversation yesterday, about how you deserve so much more appreciation than you get." I watched Connie's cheeks flush pink. "That's very sweet of you to say." "Why, I mean it," Raymond continued, leaning against the counter in a way that forced Connie to look at him. "You work so hard taking care of everyone else. When was the last time someone took care of you?" My hands clenched around my phone. What kind of conversation had they been having yesterday when I wasn't listening? "Brian takes good care of me," Connie said, but her voice lacked conviction. I could see her fidgeting with the dish towel, a nervous habit she'd had for decades. Raymond shook his head slowly. "Does he, though? When was the last time he brought you flowers? When did he last tell you how beautiful you are?" I felt sick. It was true that I'd gotten comfortable in our marriage, that I didn't do the romantic gestures I used to. But watching this manipulative bastard use that against me in my own kitchen made me want to drive home immediately and throw him out. Marriage is different when you've been together as long as we have, Connie said quietly. It doesn't have to be, Raymond replied, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. A woman like you should be cherished every single day. You shouldn't have to settle for being taken for granted. I watched in horror as he reached out and gently touched Connie's arm. She didn't pull away. You're very kind, Raymond, but I'm honest, he interrupted, and I can see how lonely you are, even when he's right there beside you. Lonely. The word hit me like a punch to the stomach. Was Connie lonely? Had I been so focused on my retirement plans and my comfortable routines that I'd stopped seeing my own wife? The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Raymond systematically planting seeds of doubt about our marriage, while positioning himself as the understanding, caring man who truly saw her worth. He asked about her dreams, her regrets, the things she'd given up when she married me and had Leah. He listened with rapt attention as she talked about wanting to travel, about the art classes she'd always wanted to take, about feeling invisible sometimes. I had to turn off the feed. I couldn't watch anymore. But that was just the beginning. Over the next 3 days, I documented a pattern of behavior that made me realize I was dealing with someone far more dangerous than I'd initially thought. Every time Connie was alone in the house, Raymond would find an excuse to engage her in these intimate conversations. He would ask about her marriage, her happiness, her future plans. He would compliment her appearance, her intelligence, her cooking. He would touch her arm, her shoulder, her hand, always briefly, always seeming innocent, but always crossing the line of appropriate behavior. Wednesday, I watched him help her reach something from a high shelf, standing so close behind her that their bodies nearly touched. Thursday, he offered to massage her shoulders after she mentioned they were sore from gardening. She accepted, and I had to leave my office and take a walk around the block to keep from driving home and confronting him immediately. But the most disturbing conversation happened Friday afternoon. I was at my doctor's appointment for my annual checkup when my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the kitchen camera. I discreetly opened the app while sitting in the waiting room and saw Raymond and Connie sitting at the kitchen table, their heads close together over cups of coffee. Have you ever thought about what your life would be like if you'd made different choices? Raymond was asking. Connie considered this seriously. Sometimes. I married Brian when I was so young. I never really got to explore who I was outside of being a wife and mother. It's not too late, Raymond said softly. You're only 58. You have decades of life ahead of you. Decades where you could be truly happy instead of just settling for comfortable. I don't know about that, Connie replied, but I could hear the wistfulness in her voice, even through the tinny phone speaker. What if I told you there was a way you could have everything you've ever wanted? The travel, the freedom, the appreciation you deserve? My heart started pounding. Where was he going with this? What do you mean? Raymond leaned forward, his voice dropping to that intimate whisper I was beginning to hate. I mean, what if you didn't have to spend the rest of your life feeling invisible? What if you could start over with someone who truly values you? Connie went very still. Raymond, you're Leah's boyfriend. Am I? He asked. Or am I a man who's fallen for the wrong woman in the family? The silence that followed felt like an eternity. I watched Connie's face, saw the conflict there, the flattery and confusion warring with her conscience. This isn't appropriate, she finally said, standing up from the table. Isn't it? Raymond stood too, moving closer to her. What's inappropriate is the way your husband treats you like furniture. What's inappropriate is the way he takes your love for granted while you waste away in this house dreaming of a life you'll never have. You don't know what you're talking about, Connie said, but her voice was shaking. Don't I? Tell me, when was the last time Brian looked at you the way I'm looking at you right now? I couldn't see Raymond's expression from the camera angle, but I could see Connie's face, and what I saw there terrified me. She wasn't angry. She wasn't disgusted. She was tempted. I need to start dinner, she said quickly, moving toward the refrigerator. Think about what I said, Connie, Raymond called after her. Think about what you really want out of life, and think about whether the man upstairs is ever going to give it to you. I sat in that doctor's office staring at my phone screen long after they'd left the kitchen, feeling like my entire world was crumbling. This wasn't just about Raymond being inappropriate with my wife. This was a calculated seduction, a systematic campaign to destroy my marriage from the inside out. But why? What did he gain from breaking up my marriage and stealing my wife? As I drove home from the doctor's office, my mind raced through possibilities. Money was the obvious answer, but Raymond didn't seem interested in getting access to our accounts. We were comfortable, but not wealthy. The house was nice, but not a mansion. My retirement savings were decent, but nothing extraordinary. Then it hit me like a lightning bolt. The life insurance policy. The one worth $500,000 that Connie would inherit if something happened to me. The one we'd taken out 20 years ago when Leah was still a child. The one that would set Raymond up very nicely if he could convince Connie to leave me for him. But even that seemed small compared to what I was beginning to suspect. This wasn't just about money. This was about power, control, the thrill of taking something that belonged to someone else. Raymond wasn't just after my wife's affection or my insurance money. He was after my entire life. As I pulled into my driveway and saw his car parked in my spot, I realized I was dealing with something far more sinister than a simple affair. I was dealing with a predator who had moved into my home, gained my daughter's trust, and was systematically dismantling everything I'd built over 35 years of marriage. The question was, how far was he willing to go to get what he wanted? The revelation came on a Saturday morning when I thought I was safe. Leah had picked up an extra shift at the hospital, covering for a colleague who'd called in sick. I told Connie I was going to Home Depot to look at new gutters for the house, a mundane errand that would give me an hour or two to monitor what happened when they thought they were completely alone. I parked 3 blocks away in the lot of a small cafe, ordered a coffee I didn't want, and opened the camera app on my phone. My hands were already trembling before I even saw anything. The past week of surveillance had been eating away at me, each conversation between Raymond and Connie more intimate than the last, each moment of contact more inappropriate. What I witnessed that morning shattered every assumption I'd made about how far this manipulation had progressed. Raymond appeared in the living room around 9:30, fresh from a shower, wearing only a t-shirt and jeans. Connie was on the couch, reading a magazine, still in her robe and slippers. The domestic scene looked innocent enough until Raymond sat down beside her, closer than necessary. "Connie," he said, his voice carrying that same intimate tone I'd grown to hate. "We need to talk." She looked up from her magazine, and I could see the conflict in her expression, even through the grainy camera feed. "Raymond, we've talked about this. What happened yesterday was..." "Was what?" he interrupted, turning to face her fully. "A mistake?" "Because it didn't feel like a mistake to me." "Ray." My blood went cold. What had happened yesterday? I'd been at my monthly lunch with my old college roommate, Tom. What had I missed? "It was wrong," Connie said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're with Leah. I'm married to Brian. We can't..." "Can't what?" Raymond moved closer, and I watched in horror as he took her hand. "Can't be honest about how we feel? Can't admit that there's something real between us?" Connie didn't pull her hand away. That simple fact hit me like a physical blow. My wife of 35 years was holding hands with my daughter's boyfriend in my living room, and she wasn't stopping it. "This is insane," she whispered. But she was looking at their joined hands, not at his face. "What are we doing?" "We're being honest for the first time," Raymond said. "Honest about the fact that you're wasted on him. Honest about the fact that you deserve so much more than a man who treats you like a piece of furniture." "Brian isn't that bad," Connie protested weakly. Raymond laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. "Isn't he? When was the last time he surprised you? When did he last make you feel beautiful, desired, alive? When did he last make you feel like a woman instead of just a housekeeper?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone across the cafe. Every word was hitting its target because there was truth in it. I had gotten comfortable. I'd taken Connie for granted. But that didn't give this manipulative bastard the right to use my failures against me. "He's a good man," Connie said. But even she sounded like she was trying to convince herself. "Good isn't enough," Raymond replied, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing her knuckles. You don't need good, Connie. You need passion. You need someone who sees you for the incredible woman you are. I watched my wife's face crumble, saw 35 years of small disappointments and unspoken resentments surface in her expression. Raymond saw it too, and he pressed his advantage. "Leave him," he said simply. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Connie stared at him, her mouth slightly open, her breathing shallow. "I can't," she whispered. "Why not? Because of some piece of paper you signed decades ago? Because of vows you made to a man who stopped seeing you years ago?" "Because of Leah," Connie said, her voice breaking. "She loves you. She thinks you're going to marry her." Raymond's expression shifted, and for a moment I saw something cold and calculating beneath the charming facade. "Leah is a child. She'll get over it. She'll find someone else." "She's not a child. She's my daughter." "And I'm not in love with your daughter," Raymond said, his voice dropping to that seductive whisper again. "I'm in love with you." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This wasn't just some elaborate scheme to get money or property. Raymond was claiming to be in love with my wife, and from the way Connie was looking at him, she was starting to believe it. "This is crazy," she said, but she wasn't pulling away from him. If anything, she was leaning closer. "Is it? Or is it the first sane thing that's happened to you in years?" Raymond reached up and touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheek. "You're 58 years old, Connie. How much time do you have left to be truly happy? How much time do you want to waste settling for less than you deserve?" I watched my wife close her eyes at his touch, and something inside me died. This wasn't just about Raymond anymore. This was about Connie choosing to believe his lies, choosing to throw away our marriage for the fantasy he was selling her. "What about the money?" she asked suddenly, opening her eyes. "What about the house, the insurance, everything we've built together?" Raymond smiled, and I saw the predator clearly for the first time. "What about it? You're entitled to half of everything in a divorce. And with your husband's stress levels, his age, his health issues, well, let's just say life insurance exists for a reason." The implication hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't just talking about Connie leaving me. He was talking about her outliving me, about collecting on my life insurance policy while living happily ever after with the man who'd stolen her from me. "Raymond," Connie said, her voice shocked, "you can't mean—" "I mean I love you," he said, cutting her off. "And I want to spend the rest of my life with you, however long that turns out to be." The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Raymond wasn't just planning to steal my wife, he was planning to replace me entirely. And from the way he was talking about my health, my stress levels, my age, I was beginning to wonder if he intended to speed up that timeline. "I need time to think," Connie said finally, standing up from the couch. "Of course," Raymond said, standing with her. "But don't take too long. Life is short, and we've already wasted too much time pretending we don't feel what we feel." He kissed her then, not on the cheek or the forehead, but full on the mouth. A real kiss, passionate and desperate. The kind of kiss I hadn't given my wife in years. And she kissed him back. I sat in that cafe, watching my marriage die in real time, feeling like I was suffocating. 35 years of love, commitment, shared dreams and struggles, and it was all being erased by a smooth-talking predator who saw my wife as nothing more than a stepping stone to a better life. But as I watched Raymond hold my wife in my living room, as I listened to him promise her a future that could only exist if I was out of the picture, I felt something else besides heartbreak and betrayal. I felt rage. This man had come into my home under the pretense of loving my daughter. He'd eaten my food, slept under my roof, and systematically dismantled my marriage with surgical precision. He'd identified every crack in my relationship with Connie and exploited them with the skill of a professional con artist. But more than that, he'd threatened me. The casual way he'd mentioned my stress levels, my health, my age, combined with his comments about life insurance, painted a picture that made my blood run cold. Raymond wasn't just planning to steal my wife. He was planning to get rid of me entirely. As I drove home from the cafe, my mind was crystal clear for the first time in weeks. I wasn't going to sit back and watch this happen. I wasn't going to let this predator destroy my family and possibly threaten my life. I had evidence now, proof of what Raymond was really doing. The question was, would anyone believe me? And more importantly, would Connie choose our marriage over the fantasy Raymond was selling her? I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at the house I'd called home for over 20 years. Through the front window, I could see Connie in the kitchen, probably starting lunch. She looked the same as always, but I knew now that everything had changed. Raymond's car was parked in its usual spot, and I wondered if he was watching me from inside, calculating his next move. Did he know I suspected something? Did he care? As I walked toward my front door, I realized that the war for my family, my marriage, and possibly my life was just beginning. And I was going to fight with everything I had, because losing wasn't an option, not anymore. I couldn't eat lunch. I sat at my kitchen table, watching Connie move around the space where I'd witnessed her betrayal just hours earlier, and felt like I was living in some alternate reality. She served me a turkey sandwich and asked about my morning at Home Depot, the same domestic routine we'd followed for decades, but everything felt hollow and false. Raymond emerged from the guest room around 1 o'clock, freshly dressed and wearing that practiced smile that now made my skin crawl. "Afternoon, Mr. Brian," he said, settling into the chair across from me like he belonged there. "How are those gutters looking?" The casual way he asked, knowing he'd spent the morning seducing my wife, filled me with such rage I had to grip my coffee mug to keep my hands from shaking. "Fine," I managed to say. "You know," Raymond continued, helping himself to chips from the bag Connie had left on the table, "I was thinking I could help you with those. I'm pretty handy with home improvement projects." Hey, the audacity was breathtaking. Here was a man who was actively trying to destroy my marriage, offering to help me maintain the home he was planning to inherit through my wife. "That's very thoughtful," Connie said, shooting Raymond a look that I couldn't quite read. "Brian could use the help. He's not as young as he used to be." The comment stung because it echoed something Raymond had said to her in one of their private conversations. Was she already parroting his manipulation back to me? "I can handle my own gutters," I said, my voice sharper than intended. An uncomfortable silence fell over the kitchen. Raymond's smile never wavered, but I caught something calculating in his eyes, like he was filing away my reaction for future use. That evening, after Leah came home exhausted from her double shift, I knew I had to act. I couldn't let this continue another day, but I also knew I had to be smart about it. If I came off as paranoid or jealous, Raymond would use that against me, turning my family further against me. I waited until 10 o'clock, when Leah had gone to bed and Connie was reading in the living room. Raymond was in the guest room, supposedly working on job applications on his laptop. It was time. I knocked on the guest room door, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. When Raymond opened it, he looked genuinely surprised to see me. "Mr. Brian, is everything all right?" "We need to talk," I said, pushing past him into the room. "Close the door." Raymond hesitated for a moment, then shut the door behind him. His laptop was indeed open on the bed, but I could see it was displaying a social media page, not job listings. "What's this about?" he asked, sitting on the edge of the bed with that same casual confidence that had been grating on me for weeks. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app, scrolling to one of the most damning conversations I'd recorded. "This is about what you've really been doing in my house." I hit play, and Raymond's voice filled the small room. "Leave him. You don't need good, Connie. You need passion. You need someone who sees you for the incredible woman you are." The color drained from Raymond's face, but he recovered quickly, too quickly. "You've been recording us?" "Every conversation," I said coldly. "Every manipulation, every lie you've told my wife to turn her against me." Raymond stood up, his demeanor shifting from surprised to defensive. "I don't know what you think you heard, but I heard you tell my wife you love her." I cut him off. "I heard you convince her to leave me. I heard you talk about my life insurance policy like you're already planning to collect on it." For a moment, Raymond's mask slipped completely. The charming, respectful young man disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. "You can't prove anything." "Can't I?" I scrolled to another recording. "How about this one, where you tell her that life insurance exists for a reason? Or this one, where you mention my stress levels and age like you're counting down the days?" Raymond laughed. but there was no humor in it. You're paranoid, old man. You think everyone's out to get you because you can't handle the fact that your wife is unhappy. The words hit their target, but I forced myself to stay focused. Get out! Excuse me? Get out of my house. Tonight. Take your things and leave. Raymond's expression hardened. I don't think so. The casual way he refused shocked me. This is my house. I'm telling you to leave. And I'm telling you that's not going to happen, Raymond said, stepping closer to me. He was younger, stronger, and for the first time, I felt genuinely intimidated by him. You see, Mr. Bryan, I've spent weeks building a relationship with your family. Your wife trusts me. Your daughter loves me. If you try to turn them against me now, who do you think they're going to believe? The bitter, paranoid old man who's been spying on his own family? Or the caring young man who's been nothing but respectful and helpful? I felt the trap closing around me. He was right. Without context, the recordings could be explained away as misunderstandings. Raymond was a master manipulator, and he'd been careful to never cross any lines that couldn't be explained away as innocent. Leah will believe me, I said, but even I could hear the uncertainty in my voice. Will she? Raymond smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever seen. After I tell her how you've been secretly recording her private conversations, how you violated her privacy and mine, how you've been obsessing over every interaction I have with your wife because you can't handle the fact that she might be happy with someone else? He was turning everything around, making me the villain in my own story. It was masterful and terrifying. You're sick, I said. I'm practical, Raymond corrected. I saw an opportunity, and I took it. Your wife is lonely, neglected, desperate for someone to see her worth. Your daughter is naive and trusting. And you— He looked me up and down, dismissively. You're a bitter old man who stopped fighting for his family years ago. The truth in his words was like acid. I had gotten comfortable. I had taken Connie for granted. I had stopped fighting for our marriage somewhere along the way. But here's the thing, Raymond continued, his voice dropping to that same intimate whisper he used with Connie. I'm not going anywhere. And if you try to make me, I'll destroy you. I'll convince your wife that you're having some kind of breakdown. I'll tell your daughter that you've been sexually harassing me, that you're jealous of our relationship and trying to break us up. I'll make you the monster in this story. The threat was so casual, so matter-of-fact, that it took my breath away. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was psychological warfare. You won't get away with this, I said, but the words sounded weak even to my own ears. I already have, Raymond replied. Your wife kissed me back today, Mr. Bryan. She's already choosing me over you. It's just a matter of time before she makes it official. He was right, and we both knew it. The kiss I'd witnessed had shattered something inside me because it wasn't just physical betrayal. It was emotional surrender. Connie had chosen to believe his lies over 35 years of marriage. Now, Raymond said, sitting back down on the bed and opening his laptop like our conversation was over, I suggest you go to bed and think very carefully about your next move. Because if you try to fight me on this, you'll lose everything. Your wife, your daughter, your home, your dignity, all of it. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of his words. He held all the cards. He'd positioned himself perfectly, turned my own family against me without them even realizing it. And the most terrifying part was that he was probably right about the outcome. But as I left the guest room and walked down the hallway toward my bedroom, I realized something important. Raymond had made one crucial mistake in his threats. He'd revealed exactly how far he was willing to go to protect his scheme. The casual way he'd talked about destroying my reputation, about convincing my family I was having a breakdown, about making me the monster in the story. It showed a level of calculation that went beyond simple opportunism. This was a man who would say anything, do anything, destroy anyone who got in his way. And that meant Leah was in just as much danger as I was. Because once Raymond had what he wanted from Connie, once he'd secured his position in our family and our finances, what would stop him from discarding Leah the same way he was planning to discard me? As I lay in bed next to my wife, listening to her peaceful breathing and knowing she was dreaming about another man, I made a decision. I wasn't going to roll over and let Raymond destroy my family. I was going to fight, but I was going to be smarter about it. Raymond thought he'd won because he'd manipulated his way into our hearts and home, but he'd also revealed his true nature to me, and that was going to be his downfall. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next morning brought the inevitable explosion I'd been dreading. I woke to the sound of raised voices coming from the kitchen, and I knew immediately that Raymond had made his first move in the chess game he'd warned me about the night before. I found Leah standing in the middle of the kitchen, still in her scrubs from the night shift, her face flushed with anger. Connie sat at the table looking confused and upset, while Raymond stood behind her with his hand protectively on her shoulder. The picture of the caring boyfriend defending his girlfriend's mother from an unreasonable father. "Dad, is it true?" Leah demanded the moment she saw me. "Did you put cameras in the house to spy on Ray and Mom?" My stomach dropped. He'd done exactly what he'd threatened to do, turned my necessary surveillance into evidence of my paranoid behavior. "Leah, let me explain." "Explain what?" she interrupted, her voice rising. "Explain why you've been secretly recording us? Explain why you've been watching our private conversations like some kind of stalker?" I looked at Connie, hoping to see some recognition of what Raymond was really doing, but her expression was closed off, almost cold. "Brian," she said quietly, "how could you violate our privacy like that?" "Our privacy?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "Connie, if you knew what I'd seen—" "What you've seen is a man who's been nothing but kind and helpful to this family," Raymond interjected, his voice perfectly calibrated to sound hurt and defensive. "I don't understand why you've decided to see something sinister in every interaction I have with your wife." The way he said "your wife" made my blood boil, especially knowing what had happened between them just yesterday. But I could see from Leah's expression that every word I said in my defense was only digging me deeper into the hole Raymond had prepared. "Show her the recordings," I said desperately. "Show her what he's really been saying to you, Connie." "Brian, stop," Connie said, standing up from the table. "Just stop. This jealousy, this paranoia, it's not like you." "Jealousy?" I stared at my wife in disbelief. "Is that what you think this is?" "What else could it be?" Leah said, moving to stand beside Raymond. "Ray told me how you've been hostile to him from day one, how you've been looking for any excuse to get rid of him." I felt like I was drowning. Every word I'd spoken to Raymond in private, every moment of coldness or suspicion, had been carefully documented and reported back to Leah, but stripped of context and twisted to support his narrative. "He's been manipulating you," I said, looking directly at Connie. "Both of you. Can't you see that? The only person I see trying to manipulate anyone is you," Leah shot back, "using those recordings to try to make Ray look bad, because you can't handle the fact that Mom enjoys having someone around who actually appreciates her." The words hit like a slap. My own daughter was throwing my failures as a husband in my face, and she didn't even realize she was parroting Raymond's manipulation tactics. "Leah," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "I know how this looks, but if you would just listen to what he said." "I've heard enough," she interrupted. "I can't believe you would do something so creepy and invasive. Recording us in our own home?" "This is my home," I said, the words coming out harder than I intended. The silence that followed was deafening. I saw something shift in Leah's expression, a hardening that told me I'd just made a crucial mistake. "Your home?" she repeated quietly. "So we're just guests here? Ray and I are just charity cases you're graciously allowing to stay?" "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant," Raymond said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "And honestly, Mr. Bryant, it explains a lot. Leah and I have been trying so hard to be respectful, to stay out of your way, to contribute to the household. But if you see us as intruders—" He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. He was painting himself and Leah as the wounded parties, the ungrateful father figure who'd been secretly surveilling them and now wanted to throw them out. "Maybe we should find somewhere else to stay," Leah said, her voice breaking slightly. "I clearly made a mistake thinking we were welcome here." "Leah, no," Connie said quickly, reaching for her daughter's hand. "This is your home too. Your father is he's been under a lot of stress lately." Stress. Another word Raymond had planted in their conversations, another way to explain away my legitimate concerns as the product of an aging, unstable mind. "I'm not stressed," I said firmly. I'm trying to protect this family from someone who doesn't have our best interests at heart. Protect us from what? Leah demanded. From someone who helps with housework? Who listens when Mom talks about her day? Who actually makes an effort to be part of this family instead of hiding in his office all the time? Each accusation was like a knife twist, partially because they contained enough truth to sting. I had been distant. I had taken Connie for granted. I had retreated to my office more often than I should have. But Raymond was using my genuine shortcomings to blind them to his manipulation. Show them the recording from yesterday, I said desperately. Show them the conversation about leaving me. Connie went very still. For a moment I thought I saw recognition flash in her eyes. Memory of the conversation Raymond probably thought I hadn't witnessed. What conversation? Leah asked, looking between her mother and Raymond. There was no conversation about leaving anyone, Raymond said smoothly. Your father is twisting innocent interactions into something sinister because he can't handle the fact that your mother and I have become friends. But I caught the look he shot at Connie, quick and warning. He was reminding her to stay quiet, to maintain the fiction they'd built together. Connie, I said, looking directly at my wife, tell her what he said to you. Tell her what you talked about. For a long moment, Connie didn't respond. I could see the internal struggle playing out on her face, the war between 35 years of marriage and the intoxicating fantasy Raymond had been selling her. We talked about a lot of things, she said finally, her voice carefully neutral. Raymond is a good listener, but there was nothing inappropriate about our conversations. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My wife was lying to our daughter to protect the man who was trying to destroy our marriage. She was choosing Raymond's version of reality over the truth we both knew. Mom, Leah said gently, has Dad been acting strange lately? Paranoid or jealous? I watched Connie's face as she considered the question, and I knew what her answer would be before she spoke. Raymond had been laying the groundwork for this moment for weeks, planting seeds of doubt about my mental state, my stability, my trustworthiness. He has been different, Connie admitted quietly. More suspicious, more controlling. I've been worried about him. There it is, Raymond said, his voice full of false compassion. Mr. Bryan, I think you need help. Professional help. This level of paranoia, this need to spy on your own family, it's not normal. I'm not paranoid, I shouted, finally losing control. I'm trying to save my marriage from a manipulative sociopath who's been working to destroy it since the day he moved in. The outburst was exactly what Raymond had been waiting for. I saw satisfaction flash in his eyes as Leah stepped back from me, her expression a mixture of fear and disgust. Dad, she said quietly, you're scaring me. The words broke something inside me. My own daughter was afraid of me because I was trying to protect her from the man who was using her to get to her mother. Leah, please, I said, trying to control my voice. Just listen to the recordings. Hear what he really said. I don't want to hear any more of your sick recordings, she replied. I can't believe you would violate our privacy like that. I can't believe you would try to destroy my relationship because you're jealous that Ray treats Mom better than you do. And there it was. Raymond's masterpiece. He'd turned my attempt to expose his manipulation into evidence of my own instability. He'd used my genuine failures as a husband to justify his seduction of my wife. He'd positioned himself as the victim of my unreasonable jealousy and paranoia. I think Ray and I should move out, Leah said, looking at her mother. I can't stay in a house where my own father is spying on me. No, Connie said quickly. Leah, this is still your home. Your father just needs some time to adjust to the changes. Changes. As if Raymond's systematic destruction of our marriage was just a natural evolution that I needed to accept. I don't want to cause problems in your marriage, Raymond said, his voice heavy with false regret. Maybe it would be better if Leah and I found our own place. It was a perfect manipulation. By offering to leave, he was making himself look reasonable and selfless while putting pressure on Connie to defend his right to stay. And it worked exactly as he intended. You're not causing problems, Connie said firmly, looking at me. Bryan is causing problems, and until he can learn to treat you with respect, I think he should be the one to leave. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My wife of 35 years was asking me to leave my own home to make room for the man who was destroying our marriage. Connie, I said, my voice barely a whisper, "I'm sorry, Brian," she said, but her eyes were cold. "I can't live with someone who doesn't trust me, someone who spies on me and tries to turn my own daughter against the man she loves." I looked around the kitchen at the three faces staring back at me. Leah, angry and disgusted. Raymond, wearing an expression of false sympathy that didn't quite hide his triumph. And Connie, my wife, my partner, my best friend for over 3 decades, looking at me like I was a stranger. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll pack a bag." As I walked toward the stairs, I heard Raymond's voice behind me, soft and comforting, as he consoled the women I'd just lost. "It's not your fault," he was saying. "Sometimes people change as they get older. Sometimes the stress of retirement, of feeling less useful, can make them paranoid and controlling." I stopped on the stairs, my hand gripping the banister so tightly my knuckles went white. He was already rewriting the narrative, explaining away my behavior as the natural deterioration of an aging mind. By the time I came back to reclaim my family, he'd have convinced them I was suffering from dementia or depression or some other condition that explained my delusions about his true nature. As I packed a suitcase in the bedroom I'd shared with Connie for 20 years, I realized that Raymond had achieved something remarkable. He'd managed to make himself the victim and me the villain, all while seducing my wife and poisoning my daughter against me. But as I zipped up the suitcase and took one last look around the room, I made myself a promise. This wasn't over. Raymond might have won this battle, but the war was far from finished. I was going to find a way to expose him for what he really was, and when I did, I was going to make sure he lost everything he'd stolen from me. I spent 3 weeks in a motel on the outskirts of town, 3 weeks of sleepless nights and endless replaying of every conversation, every moment I could have handled differently. The Moonlight Inn wasn't much to look at. Faded carpet, thin walls, and a persistent smell of industrial disinfectant. But it gave me something I desperately needed: time to think. Raymond had been brilliant in his manipulation. I had to give him that. He'd isolated me from my family, made me look like the unstable, jealous husband, while positioning himself as the caring, supportive boyfriend who was just trying to help. But brilliant manipulators often make one crucial mistake. They get overconfident. On a Tuesday morning, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Leah's name, and for a moment I hesitated. Our last conversation had ended with her calling me a creepy, paranoid old man, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Dad?" Her voice was different, shaky, uncertain, nothing like the angry confidence she'd displayed 3 weeks ago. "Leah, what's wrong?" "I need to see you," she said quickly. "Can you meet me at Rosie's Diner, the one on Elm Street?" Rosie's was a 24-hour place we used to go to when she was in high school, back when she still thought I was the smartest man in the world. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. I found her in a corner booth, hunched over a cup of coffee that looked like it had been sitting there for hours. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her normally perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked up when I approached, and I saw something in her expression that made my heart race. Doubt. "Dad," she said as I slid into the booth across from her, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Always." She took a shaky breath. "Did you really see Ray trying to seduce Mom?" The question hung between us like a lifeline. "Yes," I said simply. "I saw him systematically working to turn her against me and convince her to leave our marriage." Leah's eyes filled with tears. "I found something," she whispered, pulling out her phone. "Last night, Ray got a call while he was in the shower. His phone kept buzzing, so I looked at it to see if it was important." She turned the screen toward me, and I felt my blood pressure spike. It was a text conversation between Raymond and someone named Marcus, and the messages made my stomach turn. "Phase 2 complete." Read one message from Raymond. "Old man's out of the house. Wife is completely under my influence," Marcus had responded. "Beautiful. How long before you think you can get her to change the will?" "Couple more months," Raymond had replied. "She's already talking about how unfair it is that everything goes to the husband automatically. I'm working on convincing her that daughters should inherit equally." My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more messages. "Insurance policy is $500K, Raymond had written. "Plus the house is worth at least $300. If we play this right, I'll be set for life." What about the daughter? Marcus had asked. Useful for now. Once I'm legally in the family through marriage or inheritance, I can dump her. She's too clingy anyway. I looked up at Leah, saw the devastation in her eyes, and felt my heart break for her. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. There's more, she whispered, scrolling to another conversation. Look at this one. This thread was with someone named Derek, and it was even worse. Raymond was bragging about his long con, describing how he'd identified our family as perfect marks. A lonely wife, a distant husband, a trusting daughter, and enough money to make it worth his time. The old man suspected something, one message read. Had to discredit him fast. Made him look paranoid and jealous. Worked like a charm. You've done this before, Derek had written back. Third time. First two were smaller payoffs, but this one's the jackpot. Wife is completely hooked. Thinks I'm her soulmate. Daughter defended me against her own father. I could probably convince them both to rob a bank for me at this point. I set the phone down carefully, my hands trembling with rage. Leah, how long have you known? I saw the messages last night, she said, wiping tears from her cheeks. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything you said, everything Ray said. And something just felt wrong. So this morning, I looked through more of his stuff. He pulled out a small notebook. I found this in his bag. Dad, it's like a manual for manipulating people. He has notes about Mom's insecurities, about my personality, about your habits. Everything he's done has been calculated. I flipped through the pages, seeing my family dissected like specimens in a lab. Raymond had documented Connie's loneliness, her regrets about not traveling, her feelings of being taken for granted. He'd noted Leah's need for approval, her loyalty, her tendency to defend people she cared about. And he'd analyzed my weaknesses, my complacency in marriage, my tendency to retreat rather than confront, my pride. There's a whole section about how to isolate targets from their support systems, Leah continued, her voice getting stronger as the shock wore off and anger took its place. Dad, he planned everything, even the timing of when he moved in with us. We need to show this to your mother, I said. Leah's expression crumpled. I tried. This morning, before I called you. But she won't listen. She says I'm just trying to cause drama because I'm jealous that Ray pays attention to her instead of me. The depths of Raymond's manipulation were staggering. He'd even turned mother against daughter, making Connie believe that Leah was the jealous one now. She's completely under his spell, Leah continued. Dad, I think he's got her convinced that you're having some kind of mental breakdown and that I'm just feeding into your delusions. I felt a familiar rage building, but this time it was focused and purposeful. We're going to stop him. How? Mom won't listen to me, and she definitely won't listen to you. I thought for a moment, then smiled grimly. Because Raymond made the same mistake all con artists make eventually. He got greedy. That afternoon, I called my lawyer, David Morrison, and arranged an emergency meeting. David had been handling our family's legal affairs for 15 years, and when I showed him the text messages and notebook, his expression grew increasingly grave. Brian, this is evidence of attempted fraud, he said, adjusting his glasses as he studied the notebook. This man has been deliberately manipulating your wife with the intent to defraud your family of significant assets. Can we use this to get him arrested? Possibly, but more importantly, we can use this to protect your assets immediately. David leaned forward. I'm going to file an emergency motion to freeze all joint accounts and prevent any changes to wills or insurance policies. This evidence shows clear intent to defraud. Within 48 hours, David had worked his legal magic. Not only were our assets protected, but he'd also managed to get a restraining order against Raymond based on the evidence of his fraudulent scheme. Friday morning, I drove Leah back to the house she'd been afraid to enter for 2 days. We found Raymond's car in the driveway and Connie's car gone. She'd mentioned something about grocery shopping in one of her messages to Leah. Are you sure about this? Leah asked as we sat in my car, looking at the house that had been my sanctuary until 3 weeks ago. I'm sure, I said, patting the folder containing copies of all evidence. It's time to end this. We found Raymond in the living room, lounging on my couch like he owned it, watching television. when he saw us walk in together. I caught a flicker of concern cross his face before his practiced smile slid into place. "Leah, sweetheart," he said, standing up. "I was worried about you. Where have you been?" "Getting to know the real you," she replied, her voice ice cold. Raymond's smile faltered. "What do you mean?" I stepped forward, pulling out the printed text messages. "We mean, we know exactly what you are, Raymond. Or should I say, we know what you've done to at least 2 other families before ours." The color drained from his face as I handed him the papers. He scanned them quickly, and I watched as his entire demeanor changed. The charming boyfriend disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. "Where did you get these?" he demanded. "From your phone," Leah said, "and your notebook, and your laptop once I knew what to look for." Raymond's jaw clenched. "You went through my private belongings? You invaded our family," I replied. "Turnabout is fair play." For a moment, the 3 of us stood in silence. Then Raymond laughed, but it was nothing like the warm, engaging laugh he'd used to charm my family. This was bitter, almost admiring. "I have to hand it to you," he said, looking at me. "I thought you were just a paranoid old fool. I didn't think you had it in you to fight back." "You made one crucial mistake," I told him. "You underestimated how much I love my family." "Your family?" Raymond scoffed. "Your wife chose me over you. Your daughter defended me against you, some family." "My daughter is standing right here," I said calmly, "and she's the one who exposed you." Or Raymond turned to look at Leah, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely surprised. "Leah? You called me clingy," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "You told your friend Marcus that I was just useful until you could dump me. Did you think I wouldn't find that?" "Sweetheart, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she cut him off. "I understand that you're a professional con artist who targeted my family because you thought we'd be easy marks." "Say you mouse," and you were right, I added. "We were easy marks. A lonely wife, a distant husband, a trusting daughter. You played us perfectly." Raymond straightened up, and I saw the predator clearly for the first time without his mask. "So what now? You think you can just throw me out? Connie won't believe you. She loves me." "Connie doesn't have a choice," I said, pulling out another set of papers. "See? When you commit fraud in the state of Texas, especially fraud targeting elderly victims, the legal system takes it very seriously." His eyes widened as he read the restraining order. "You can't be serious." "Deadly serious. You have 30 minutes to pack your things and leave. If you come within 500 feet of any member of my family after that, you'll be arrested." "Connie will never forgive you for this," he said, but I could hear the desperation creeping into his voice. "Maybe not," I admitted, "but at least she'll be safe from you." Raymond stared at me for a long moment, then suddenly lunged forward. For a second, I thought he was going to attack me, but instead he grabbed Leah's arm. "You little bitch," he snarled, "all pretense of charm gone. You've ruined everything." That was his final mistake. Threatening my daughter in front of me unleashed 35 years of protective instinct. I shoved him away from Leah so hard he stumbled backward into the coffee table. "Touch her again and restraining order won't matter," I said, my voice deadly calm. "I'll put you in the hospital." Something in my expression must have convinced him I meant it, because he stepped back, hands raised. "Fine, but this isn't over." "Yes, it is," Leah said firmly. "It's over, and you lost." I watched from the window as Raymond loaded his car with the belongings that had been cluttering my guest room for weeks. When Connie came home an hour later to find his things gone and the 2 of us waiting for her, the conversation was painful, but necessary. It took 3 hours of showing her evidence, of letting her read his own words about manipulating her, before she finally believed us. When she did, she collapsed into my arms and cried for an hour, mourning not just the betrayal, but the fantasy he'd sold her about a different life. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against my chest. "Brian, I'm so sorry. How can you ever forgive me?" "Because I love you," I said simply, and because Raymond was a professional. He knew exactly which buttons to push. That evening, the 3 of us sat in our kitchen, really sat together for the first time in months. Connie had made her famous pot roast, Leah had brought ice cream, and I had uncorked a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. "I can't believe I fell for it," Leah said, shaking her head. "All those times you tried to warn me, Dad, and I called you paranoid." "You trusted someone you loved," I replied. That's not a character flaw, but I should have listened to you. Maybe. But you did listen when it mattered most. You're the one who found the evidence that stopped him." Connie reached across the table and took my hand. "What happens now?" "Now we rebuild," I said. "We remember why we fell in love 35 years ago. We work on the things Raymond exploited to drive us apart, and we make sure no one can ever do this to our family again." 6 months later, I got a call from Detective Martinez with the Fraud Division. Raymond had been arrested in Arizona, attempting to run the same con on a wealthy widow in Scottsdale. The evidence we'd provided had been crucial in building a case against him for a pattern of elder fraud across multiple states. "He's looking at 10 to 15 years, Detective Martinez told me, and thanks to your evidence, his other victims are finally getting justice too." As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete peace. Raymond was gone, my family was healing, and the man who had tried to destroy everything I'd built was finally facing consequences for his actions. That evening, Connie and I sat on our back porch, watching the sunset and talking about our plans for the future. Real plans this time, not fantasies spun by a manipulator. "I want to take that trip to Ireland," she said suddenly. "Then let's do it," I replied, squeezing her hand. "And I want to take those art classes I always talked about. I'll drive you there myself." She turned to look at me, and I saw something in her eyes I thought I'd lost forever. Love mixed with respect, affection seasoned with genuine appreciation. "I love you, Brian," she said. "The real you, not some fantasy version. I'm sorry it took almost losing you to remember that." "I love you too," I said, and I promised to never take that for granted again. As the sun set behind our house, not his, I realized that Raymond had actually done us a favor in the cruelest way possible. He'd shown us where our marriage was vulnerable, where we'd grown complacent and distant. In trying to destroy us, he'd ultimately forced us to rebuild stronger than before. The predator was gone, my family was safe, and for the first time in months, I was truly, completely happy.